because of what's going on right now.
I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder and kill another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Since 2016, some U.S. professional athletes have silently protested police brutality and racial inequality during the playing of the U.S. national anthem. The demonstrations have generated mixed reactions. Some have called the protests unpatriotic and disrespectful of the U.S. flag, the national anthem, the police, and the military, when others believe that it is their First Amendment right of free speech to do and protest in the way they want.
My name is Anthony Pike. I was in the United States Marine Corps for a total of 5 years. I did 4 years active duty from December of 2000 to December of 2004. My overall thoughts on kneeling during the anthem from the NFL players Kaepernick and the majority of the league at this point. I'm fine with it. I think it's a great testament to our country and the freedom of speech that these players have that right to kneel during the national anthem.
You see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we held.
And this was a scene a couple of hours ago, the majority of players kneeling in Buffalo, where the Denver Broncos are visiting the Bills. In fact, some NFL players have been refusing to stand during the Star-Spangled Banner in protest of the treatment of African Americans by U.S. police. Trump says they are disrespecting the flag and the country's heritage.
Please don't be too nice. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, you know, the way you put their hand over. Like, don't hit their head, and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
The NFL and Kaepernick were protesting police brutality and the denial of constitutional rights under the 5th and 14th Amendment. Both the 5th and the 14th Amendment secure the due process rights of U.S. citizens. Due process means that every citizen has a right to fair and just procedures before the government can take away a person's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. The 5th Amendment stops the federal government from taking away life and liberty without due process in the 14th Amendment, written after the emancipation of the blacks from slavery, stopped individual states from depriving citizens of life and liberty without due process.
All right, step up. Face away from me. Face away from me.
Kaepernick and the NFL were not the first to protest police brutality against the black community. In 2014, LeBron James and NBA players wore "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts to protest the death of Eric Garner at the hands of the New York police. They wore Eric Garner was not armed and was not suspected of committing a violent crime when a New York police officer approached Garner on suspicion of selling single cigarettes from packs without tax stamps. After Garner told the police he was tired of being harassed and that he was not selling cigarettes, the officers went to arrest Garner. While arresting Garner, the officer put his arm around Garner's neck and took him to the ground. During this, Garner was killed. President Trump and his supporters claim that they are not interfering with Colin Kaepernick's First Amendment right to free speech. By kneeling, Trump supporters claim that Kaepernick is disrespecting the flag, our country, and our military.
It's a slap in the face of our fallen brothers and sisters that you would disrespect the flag, the very same banner that we fight under. You still don't grasp the concept of that flag and that anthem don't necessarily represent the current state of affairs in our country. It goes beyond that. It's unity, it's strength, it's pride in America.
You can bet that the men and women that we honor today and those who died that fateful morning 75 years ago never took a knee and never failed to stand whenever they heard our national anthem being played.
When in fact, it was actually a former veteran that gave Colin Kaepernick the idea to take a knee.
I showed him a text message from a good friend of mine who's still in the Special Forces, and he said, "Nate, I was just standing on the tarmac as a plane came back from Afghanistan to drop off a coffin that was draped in an American flag of one of our brothers, and I just couldn't stop looking at Staff Sergeant Thompson's wife and just seeing the grief and the pain, and I got filled with rage for anybody that disrespects what we are fighting for and what we stand for." And I showed Colin that text, and at that moment, you know, I saw in his eyes, they kind of like, it really affected him, you know, emotionally, and it had a big impact on his next words, which were, "I want to do something different." And we sort of came to a middle ground where he would take a knee alongside his teammates. Soldiers take a knee in front of a fallen brother's grave, you know, to show respect. He said, I think that would be really powerful. And, you know, he asked me to do it with him, and I said, "Look, I'll stand next to you. I got to stand, though. I got to stand with my hand on my heart. That's just what I do and where I'm from."
Kaepernick is not taking a knee to oppose veterans and what they do for our country, but to fight for freedoms for everybody, especially concerning police brutality.
I mean, ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people, realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust. People aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for: freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now.
But it seems no matter where a political view is stated, even if it's not on a sports field or in your place of business, a protester will lose his or her job. Muhammad Ali is an example of how political views interfered with his title. In April 1967, Muhammad Ali refused to be drafted to fight in the Vietnam War. He was stripped of his world title and his boxing license was suspended. 3 years later, in 1970, after a long legal battle, Ali's license was restored. Eventually, he wins his appeal of conviction for the draft evasion, and public opinion ultimately supported his protests against the Vietnam War. Ali was stripped of his title for mixing his political views with his celebrity status. Eventually, Muhammad Ali was proven right in his views. Rosa Parks had also left her place of business when she sat on that fateful bus and was arrested for not giving her seat up to a white passenger. She was fired from her job as a seamstress for her protest. Ultimately, Rosa Parks' protest of segregation prevailed in the Supreme Court, and she changed segregation laws. Perhaps there is no way to disassociate your political voice from your working career, but public protests and celebrity status go hand in hand. And those that are in favor of the status quo will always find a protest inconvenient and unpatriotic. After the 2016 season, Kaepernick as a free agent was not signed. Like Ali and Rosa Parks, he was too much of a political topic to hire. It was irrelevant that he was a talented quarterback. The NFL shunned him because they did not want to face the political fallout associated with him. Today, Kaepernick remains unsigned. U.S. Olympians Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who'd won gold and bronze respectively in the 200-meter sprint, raised black-gloved fists during the medal ceremony at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. This image became one of the most iconic sports images of the 20th century. The protest had been something the two athletes carefully planned. As Smith and Carlos walked to the podium, they took their shoes off to protest poverty. They wore headbands and a scarf to protest lynchings, and when the national anthem was played, they lowered their heads in defiance and raised their fists in a black power salute. They were immediately thrown out of the Olympic Stadium, stripped of their medals, and suspended from the U.S. Olympic team.
This is a demand. Very few people had the avenue to tell people how it really was or how we felt about a certain issue. You had to have a platform.
To win gold medals for one's country and still feel a second-class citizen is the bitter paradox facing many colored Americans.
And because we were black athletes, what we were supposed to do is run real fast and go home, smile, get pats on the back, and still be relegated to second-class living.
Tommy Smith sets a new world record in the 200 meters with John Carlos taking the bronze.
And I'm supposed to stand up there and look at a flag, put my hand over my heart, saying how proud I am because this flag has represented me? I don't think so, because it did not. So when the national anthem started playing, I was not looking at the ground. I was praying the Lord's Prayer. My head bowed and my fist went up in the air. I wore black gloves to represent social power or black power. I wore socks, not shoes, to represent poverty. I wore a black scarf around my neck to symbolize the lynching, the hangings that black folks went through while building this country.
As of today, the protests of Colin Kaepernick and Black Lives Matter may not have achieved its goals. In 2016 through 2017, at least 223 black lives were taken at the hands of police. Black men are 2 times more likely than white suspects to be victims of police brutality, and no members of the police force has been convicted of murder. But there has been some progress. There have been plenty of police officers who have been suspended or fired from their positions since 2016. Police forces have instituted racial sensitivity training, and social awareness and media awareness of the problem has increased. No other NFL player has lost his job for kneeling during the anthem. Members of the NFL, although without Kaepernick by their side, can continue to kneel for their fallen brothers at the hands of police. Fellow players and team owners lock arms in unity with their kneeling teammates. NFL players in the Black Lives Matter movement continue to fight and assert the 5th and 14th Amendment rights of the black community.